Welcome back. Today, I will explain to you what an SQL injection is through an example. Simplistic example, granted, but an example nevertheless. So I have one VM here, which is actually my damn vulnerable web app. That's the name of the application. And then I have another Linux machine here, which is going to be the attacker. So I have the victim and the attacker. And this is the IP address and the place where I log in. So the username is admin and password is, you guessed it, password. Here I can show you, it says password. Perfect. Okay, so now I just go ahead and click on SQL injection blind, and this is the place where I can test an blind SQL injection. So if I want to, it says here type user ID, right? So I can type in the user ID and I get some sort of data in regard to that user. I can type in 3 or 5. So it's just going to give me these users and like first name, last name, ID, whatever. Okay, perfect. So what is an SQL injection? Well, an SQL injection is when you take your own SQL query or database query and then you put it into an input field, such as this one here. So this is an input field. And then you somehow placed or format escape characters like exclamation marks and the like, or backslashes with exclamation marks. And then when this is interpreted on the other end, this escapes the parameters of the variable and goes outside of them and becomes a new command to be executed. Okay, so shall we do this manually? No. Why not? Because we would have to try out a lot of combinations for ourselves, and that wouldn't be very efficient now, would it? So we will use an automated tool called sqlmap. Before we use that automated tool, we will need to know something about the session. Granted, knowledge of the session can be acquired in a manual fashion, but I will use Burp proxy this time around. Okay, so let's go to applications, Burp. This is going to establish a proxy for me to use. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. It says that the Java version is, that Burp wasn't really designed for this Java version and that the things weren't tested out. So update now. I don't really want to update it now. Temporary project, sure, start Burp. Go, running. And while this is happening, let me just go back to the subject of the username and password. So I've seen people type in for username, username, and for password, password. Not a joke. And you might think to yourselves, oh, such terrible people, a lot of blame should go to them. No, no blame should go to them. I would place all the blame on the administrator of that network for not providing for and enforcing a policy which would effectively stop that immediately, like in the tracks. Okay, just go ahead and click on proxy so you can see the output, and then we'll configure it in preferences. So advanced network settings, manual proxy configuration, 127.0.0.1, 8080 port, use proxy server for all protocols. Okay, that's it. And now I'm just going to go ahead and reload this page, or attempt to reload it anyway. And the request has been captured here in Burp. It's not going to go anywhere unless I decide to forward it, drop it, or something else. I'm not going to let it go anywhere. I don't care. I'm just going to go ahead and utilize the data from it. I'll just let it spin like this. And I will use now SQL map. So what do we need in SQL map? Well, we kind of need to type in SQL map first to begin with. SQL map. And while you're typing, you can press Control L. It's not going to affect the current command that you're typing, but it will clear the screen, which is quite convenient. And we will require to type in the URL. So let's type in -u exclamation marks. And what is the URL? Well, we can kind of see the URL here, no problems. along with the path for submission. So Control C, Control Shift V, because you need Control Shift C and Control Shift V in the terminal. Outside of the terminal, it's Control C and Control V. Okay, now we will need the cookie. Give me cookies. Huge fan, by the way. Security. No. Okay, so obviously this is just used as a proof of concept, so you could set the security up really high and do some extremely complex stuff, but this is sufficient to demonstrate what is happening and to prove the concept, so to say. Okay, so security low, we don't actually need to type in anything else. We can just press enter now and let it run. Let it roll and let it run, let it be free. And now you can see it's outputting a lot of stuff it's doing. So it's testing for error-based, for certain types of queries, etc. It's doing a lot of automated tests and it's looking at the responses. And I can just lift this up above my head, above my gigantic head. And it says it looks like the backend DBMS is MySQL. Do you want to skip the payload specific for DBMSs? So you can type in yes with Y or N for no. So yeah, sure, just go ahead and skip them. I know that it's that type of a database. For remaining tests, they want to include all the tests for MySQL, extending provided level 1 and risk 1 values. Sure. Let's go ahead and do all the tests that we can. And it was fairly fast and actually managed to find. So the get parameter ID is vulnerable. This is here. That's right here actually. Inspect element. Okay, so it says input name ID. There we go. I've zoomed it in a little bit for you. It says input name equals quote mark ID quote mark closed. And the method is get. And it says get parameter ID is vulnerable. Do you want to keep testing others? And it could test out other input fields on that website, on that page, but no. Okay, that's it. It's done. We're not done, but it is done. And now we know that a certain parameter is vulnerable, and that it is. And you see what they've typed in. It says ID equals 3, and then they've placed a quote mark here, and then they've placed some sort of an SQL instruction. And I don't know what this is, just some random gibberish, or maybe it's part of the request or whatnot, but it doesn't matter. Here in general, you have the output of data in regard to its findings. So type union query, type generic, and what it actually did, what was the payload, what it actually put into the field itself to get a response, which helped classify that field as a vulnerable field for an SQL injection. Okay, perfect. No big deal there. Now we will need the same command. Oops. Now we'll need the same command, but we'll do something like this: --dbs, and let it run. Okay, so DBS detects the available databases, or it attempts to detect the available databases. So it says here, immediately you can see by yourselves, it says fetching database names. Knowing the database names is kind of important, because how will you access the database and extract the data from it if you don't know its name? You cannot formulate a query, which can be problematic in and of itself. Again, we're going to use the same command, but we will modify the last arguments. So we'll just say here dvwa --tables. So usually here, DVWA, damn vulnerable web app. This is usually the name of the database used for an application or for a website is the same as of that website or similar to it or as of that application, usually. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be. In this case, it's exactly the same. And what this is, what this has done is picked up the tables within the database. Okay, so I have tables guest book and I have a table users. Well, I'm kind of more interested in the users. So let's go ahead and see what's inside of the table. What sort of columns do I have inside of the table users? No. What was it? Security equals. Okay, well, I can just type that out. Okay, close the quote marks. So now I'm gonna go ahead and type in -t users -- columns. Okay, let it run. Let it roll. And there you go. So it gives us the columns. So the table user contains a user, contains some sort of an avatar, first name, last name, password, and a user ID. Perfect. So now that's what we need. That's what we want to fetch, and that's what we want to play around with. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, it's not really that complicated once you've managed to find something. And this tool is also very important for a penetration tester because they can use it to determine whether a certain field or a certain place in the website is vulnerable to a large amount of stuff in regard to SQL injections without having to do it all manually. Okay, so cookie has been submitted, so let's just do -c user comma password -- dump the passwords. Okay, don't run. Okay, so it's user and password, and that's exactly what I did. User comma password. Okay, so now it's prompting me certain questions, but above that you can see that it used an SQL query and it had 5 returns. So it retrieved 1337 admin Gordon B, Gordon Brown, Pablo Smitty, and yeah, that's about it. And these are the hashes. So this is the user and this is the hashed password. We've talked about the hashed password in the SQL database, and this is how they actually look like. So do you want to store hashes to a temporary file for eventual further processing with other tools? So you can definitely take these hashes and then process them with Hashcat or something like that, which is a lot faster. But today I'm just going to go ahead and say no. Do you want to crack them via dictionary-based attack? Yes. I mean, this generally wouldn't work, but I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. What dictionary do you want to use? So it says that the default dictionary and a custom dictionary or a file with a list of dictionary files. So you can use multiple dictionaries, you can use your own, or you can just use the system one. I'm just going to say 1. Do you want to use common password suffixes? Oh, I'm just going to go ahead and say no. Why not? And now it's trying out different passwords. And this only works because these passwords are extremely simple to guess. So the first password is ABC123 for this hash. This is Charlie for this hash. Let me in for this one. Password for this one. And that's it. It's done. It's finishing. It's dumping it all. And do you want sqlmap to try to optimize the value for DBMS delay responses? No, thank you, not this time around. I mean, this is what I wanted to show you. So you have a user with the username. You have a password with the hash and then the password value itself, the value that was hashed to begin with. And that's really it. That's the beauty of, that's an SQL injection. That's how it works. That's what happens. And this was just a brief demo on the lowest possible security settings, just so that you can see how it works. These things tend to become really complex and really difficult to execute very fast, because you're customizing queries, you're playing around with sqlmap, you're looking for potential places to attack. sqlmap can be a rather complex tool as well, although the in-depth knowledge of SQL tool is not required for this level of certification. It might be something that you want to take a look at a little bit closer, and I can also explain it, so just hit me up. As usual, I'm always willing. Okay, so that's it. I am gonna go ahead and tell you goodbye here, and hopefully I didn't bore you to death, so you will come and watch one of my next videos.